you don't know, most people call me TPJ or TJ, and I am co-leader of Truth Seekers Assembly. We are a fasting and praying ministry, and I co-lead with my husband, John, Pastor John. Okay, so we are currently walking through the book of John, and I'm loving it. I hope that you are loving it if you have watched some of the uh, previous entries to this session. And what are we? This session, or this season, I should say, has been called supernatural intelligence. There we go. I had to look it up in my mind. Did you see me looking up? I had to dig deep in my mind to remember it. Spiritual intelligence. Why is it spiritual intelligence? Because everything is spiritual when you are dealing with our faith. Everything about it is spiritual. And so that's one of the great things about walking through the book of John, is that you get to see um, really how intimate these disciples were with Jesus during his time on earth, and how it impacted their walk once he ascended back to heaven. And that's really important for us in this season. As you all know, and I keep saying it, this is the year of behold for us. And so our foundational scripture for the year is Isaiah 43. Verse 19, behold, I'm doing a new thing. Shall you not perceive it? I'm making ways in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. That is what the Lord is doing for us in this season. And so it's my prayer that as we continue to walk through this word, we are able to discern the times just like the sons of Issachar could. They were able to tell when the seasons were changing. We just had a changing of the guards, right? The presidential election has passed. The offices have switched over, and president business is getting down to business. We want to lift up our leaders in prayer, because guess what? Promotion does not come from the southwest or east, it comes from the Lord. And so the Lord has placed this president in office for a reason. And so regardless of how you feel about it, I don't have feelings online that I share publicly, but I do make sure that whoever the president is, I'm praying for them, because God has them there for a reason. So I encourage and admonish you to do the same too, because why? Everything is spiritual. All right, so let's jump right into the book of John. We have been walking, and I mean walking. I'm talking about taking a stroll, parking, talking, eating some fruit. Like, we have not been running through the book of John, and I'm not mad at it at all. This book is so rich with text, and John is Jesus's beloved. He's his best friend. He's a part of his inner circle, and so Jesus had 12 disciples, and three of them were part of his inner circle, and John was one of them. And so that is pretty much the context, or I should say the framework or the lens you should look at this book while you're reading it, because it's really like, the best friend has a little bit more insight to the stories than some other people would. You're going to tell a little bit more detail to your bestie than, other people that were just there. Or sometimes when you're having a situation and your bestie is in the situation, right? Other people can tell the story, but they can't tell the detail like you can, because you have context. You have context about some things that happened that led up to this place. So that is how I like to look at the book of John, and I hope that that helps you. Today we are walking through the book of John, chapter 7, and honestly, truly, I don't think we're going to get past the first page. I think we are going to split it right down in the middle. We might end up stopping at like verse 27, in all honesty, okay? So, I am reading from the ESV version, and I just want to jump right in so we can do the things and get to talking, because it's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. So, verse 1, chapter 7. After this, Jesus traveled in Galilee, since he did not want to travel in Judea because the Jews were trying to kill him. The Jewish festival of shelters was near. So his brother said to him, leave here and go to Judea, so that your disciples can see your works that you are doing. For no one does anything in secret while he's seeking public recognition. If you do these things, show yourself to the world, for not even his brothers believed him. So they are really being sarcastic. If you're watching live, go ahead and type in live. If you're watching replay, go ahead and type in replay. And so I love that John calls this out, because what do we know already? A prophet doesn't receive honor in his own home. If you are, experiencing anything similar, just know you're in good company. They did it to Jesus. His own brothers and sisters didn't believe him. Okay, they would interrupt his sermons. They would go to the church and be like, "But we need this thing. This is important." And he's like, "I'm doing my Father's will. I'm doing His work right now. This is not important." And so, basically, they're like, you're doing this for public recognition anyway, so go ahead and leave them and come on to the festival with us. And he's like, no, no, I can't do that, because obviously if he did that, it would speed up the timeline, and he will let you know in a hot millimeter second, it's not yet my hour. It's not yet my hour. And I love that he calls that out, because after saying these things, what did he do? He stayed. They went to the festival. And really, we call it the Festival of Tabernacles. So they went and he stayed. And so he's like, you can go for yourselves, because why? I'm not going up to the festival because it's not yet my time. If I go up there, I know what's about to happen, and it's not time for those things to happen. They're already trying to kill him. They're already deserting him and walking away from him at this time. Remember last chapter when we were reading it, many of the disciples had already left Jesus. And so Peter and the 12 disciples, they're like, well, where else are we going to go? We know you are the truth, but like, what else do you want us to do? Is where we are. And so the big lesson that you really want to get from there is timing is everything. I thought that that was really, really cool to call out, because, you know, timing really, it really do be everything. I have to say it like that, okay? But what you'll see in the book of John is that Jesus speaks about the world a lot, and he uses it in direct ways. Like, hello, when we first start the book of John, he talks about how he created the world, right? And then second way that he talks about the world is people living in the world, right? We all live in the world today as we speak, right? And then a third way that he speaks about the world is the world system. So the way that the world operates without reference to God is the third way that he's speaking about the world. And we talk about the world a lot in this respect as well. Systems that are put in place is the world. When you get into Revelations, you'll see a lot of that as well. And so the world as a creation, we know, does not belong to Satan, because what happened in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Like, we know these things. So Satan was not a part of creating the world, which means that the world does not belong to Satan. Okay, a lot of people give him way more credit than he should. He gets to rule or reign for a time, but the world is not his. Okay, and so we should know by reading John that the earth, or the world, right, and everything that's in it is the Lord's. Okay, and it's so funny because we see this also in Psalms 24. The world, in the other two senses, we would be referring to Satan's power. So you can reference John 12, verse 31. But people who haven't submitted to Christ's lordship in their lives and the world system they operate in are therefore opposed to God. This is what he's addressing when he's saying the world in the other two references, okay, or context. So if you're operating from the world perspective, then you are opposing Christ and you are opposing his Father. That is what he's saying. And so this is what we are experiencing when we're reading John chapter 1, and John chapter 3 and John chapter 5, when he's talking about, being born again. You need to be born again so that way you are not opposing God's system and not just operating in the system of Satan. Okay. So this is why he also tells us, do not love this world nor the things it offers you. In First John chapter 2 verse 15, because we know that people live in this world without ever referencing God, without giving God glory, without reference to God um, at all. And so they stand condemned. But we know that there's good news, right? We know that there's good news, and the good news is that, what is it? John 3:16. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. He didn't give his only begotten son just for people that would instantly believe, but for those who believe. And so this is why we talk about the gift of salvation. It's not for people who deserve it. None of us deserve it. We all deserve death. We all deserve hell, because we are not always good people. But God saw all of the things that we would do and still saw fit to make a plan to save us from our own destruction. Okay. And so the people who live in the world without referencing God do stand condemned, but Jesus down to earth, a man, put on earthly flesh to come down here to save us and redeem it. Okay, so God created this world, right? Because it's supposed to always be, it was always meant to be the footstool of heaven, right? It's always meant to be, um, what do you call it? We were always meant to be ambassadors. We were always meant to be kingdom citizens. And then Adam and Eve did their thing and changed the plan because Satan was being tricky. And so, God, knowing that he gave everyone free will, he's such a gentleman, he came up with a plan to redeem us. And that was Jesus. That was sending Son of Man down to earth, taking on earthly flesh, taking on all of the struggles that we take on. This is why we call him poor sometimes, because he was just rich up in heaven. He had came down to earth to do these things. So the good news is God still loves us enough to do these things, and he put a plan in motion to redeem us. And I just think that that's so beautiful. Hey, John, can you stop the dogs from barking? I think they're fighting, because that's what my dogs do in the morning, apparently. Uh, so Jesus is wanting to, he's putting, God put a plan in place for Jesus to come down here and redeem his people. Okay, we see this plan rolled out in Romans chapter 8, verse 19, I want to say through 21. But as followers of Jesus, we want to make sure that we are loving the right world, okay, and not the world systems. And so it's so easy to get caught up in the world systems, especially one thing that I've noticed, just being like raised as an only child. I have brothers, but I am like right in the middle. So my oldest brother is 10 years, 6 months older than me, and then my younger brothers are pretty much like the same. So my mom had my brother and me. We lived together. My dad had other kids. I didn't find out about them until later because he wasn't really around like that. So I was raised as like the only child. By the time I remember doing anything with my brother, for the most part, he was off to college or living with his dad. So we didn't get to spend a lot of time together. Majority of my childhood, I did get to spend alone. So I was raised like an only child. But one thing that I've learned, and then I've noticed just patterns. Y'all know I pay attention to patterns and landmarks. I love that stuff. Is that like when you are like the only girl or the only guy, you are isolated a little bit more, and so sometimes you do have like only child tendencies. And so with that, what happens is we look for community, we look for places to engage, we look for places to call home, we look for sisters if we're the girls, right? We look for brothers if we look, we're the guys. And so this is how a lot of people get in trouble in the world systems, because we want that community. And when you have community, it's hard to get out of community because these are the people that have had your back when nobody else has had your back. And so I just think a lot of times, again, this is the world system. Um, this is how gangs happen, right? And so what do? They jump you in and you can't get out. The only way out is death. They tell you, or you have to get jumped out, and they beat you near closely, near death, because you shouldn't have left anyway. Um, and in that it's like, this is a system. This is a system. Why do I have to get beat up to join your club? That's crazy. That's not even how I became a part of my own family. So sometimes it's just like looking at the way that they do things in the world should let you know, like, you know what, this probably isn't a thing, or shouldn't be a thing. It's not a thing that you should want. And so I'm saying all that to say, I've just noticed, and this is something that I've definitely had to contend with. I've wanted to do some things and join some clubs, and the Lord was like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, dang, but why not? They look like they have so much fun together. I love a good outfit. Matching is a love language. I want to do all those things. He's like, no, girl, I'm telling you no. And I didn't get like no further explanation on it. But as I started like diving into the word and looking into systems, that's why. And so the world system is totally different than God's system. And when you look at the world system, it shows you that you're going to oppose God's system. And so we see in the first chunk of John, he's being opposed by his family. They're pretty much mocking him and being sarcastic, right? And so he is like given only child vibes, but he has his own system. He has his own system. He is here to defy the world system. And so we have to do the same. And sometimes doing that makes you, you know, an outcast. I don't talk to a lot of my family. I love them, but I don't fit in because they are very systematic, or tribal, I should say. But it's a world system that they follow. And so it's like, well, why don't you do what we do? I can't do what you do. I'm not allowed, and nor do I want to. But that's because I see further, and that's no slight to them. It's just I have been able to move away. And so when you're not enmeshed in the world system, you're able to see a little bit further and see what's happening in that system that you shouldn't be partaking in, which is why it's so important for Abraham to leave his family. Abraham had to leave his family in order to do the things that God needed him to do, and in order to receive the promise that God had given him. And so that means falling out of the world, okay, getting out of the world system, being different, and having a desire to um, I would say challenge the status quo of worldly ideas. And that's what Jesus constantly did. He challenged the status quo. And so he's like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. So I just wanted to make sure that I call that out, because it's so important for us to know what that system is and what it means. Because yes, you may be opposed by your family, and it might not be your blood family. Ooh, gosh, I couldn't get that out. It might not be your blood family. It might be the family that you've created. But you have to just choose which system you're going to, yield to. And so it gets real. It gets real. But yes, so we know Jesus didn't want to walk into Judea because the Jews were trying to kill him, and he's like, I know y'all gonna do that, but not right now. Like, now is not the time. And so his brothers didn't believe him. They already didn't believe that he was the Son of Man. They didn't believe that he was the Christ. They opposed him quite often. So I just wanted to make sure that that part was clear, because some people who wrote some really good books in the Bible are indeed his brothers. Spoiler alert, Jude and James, Jesus's brothers. And the thing that I love about it is we see that, the disciples let you know quickly, oh no, they didn't believe. But when you get to read their text later on in, the end of the Bible, what do they say? They don't say, James, Jesus's brother, or Jude, Jesus's brother. They say James, a slave of Jesus, Jude, a servant of Jesus. Like, they let you know, no, no, no. We are family aside. And sometimes we try to use family as a means to get some influence, or get the perks that your famous family member got, right? No, they're like, I am a servant, I am a slave. Like, they got it, but they didn't get it at first. Okay, so when we're looking at chapter 7, they were right there telling Jesus, go ahead, come on, come on. You want to be famous anyway. And he's like, no, it's not my time yet. But they see further on down the line that he really was who he said he was. And I thought that that was good. Sometimes it's just good to see like where people start off, because just because that's where you start off don't mean that's where you're going to end. But he challenged that family system. So that is the most important piece out of there, because it's widely believed that the Messiah would make himself publicly known in this like spectacular way. So they're like, go ahead and do it. Like, make yourself known. Come on, do it in this spectacular way that's going to, change the world since you're the Messiah. Like almost like antagonistically. That's how they were moving. So I'm sure they've seen like some miracle signs and wonders that he's done. I'm sure Jesus as a kid was probably running through walls and doing all types of crazy stuff, because we see him doing this stuff here. So just imagine what he was doing when the cameras weren't around, when there weren't people writing his story, because remember, he went away for quite a while. So I just always want to point out that uh, they didn't believe that he was the Messiah. They didn't believe in him. And that doesn't mean that they didn't see miracles. That just means that they didn't submit to his claim to being the Messiah. And sometimes people see the miracles and that's just not enough. And Jesus had already called that out. Remember, he said, I'm not impressed by y'all believing me because of what you've seen. I'm impressed when you believe what you don't see. Because what is faith? Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Okay? So, I just always want to call that part out because, oh my gosh, I just feel like it's so good. All right, so um, before we move on to the next section, Jesus replied to them and told them his time had not come yet, right? But he says your time is always ready. Like, you can go anytime you want to. You can do that because you aren't completely submitted to the Father. So you are used to doing what you want to do. I don't do what I want to do. Remember, I don't know if y'all remember, but when I was growing up in church, they used to there was this cute little choir song, my body is not my body. It was the youth choir, as a matter of fact. But it's so true. Like, they were singing, my body is not my body. I choose to live God's way. And that is why we say we die to ourselves. Because when you die to yourself, it's not what you want to do. It's what God wants you to do. You're choosing to live God's way. And that's what he's showing them here. Like, my timing is not yet come. I can't do what I want to do. You've been doing what you want to do, so you can go on ahead, but I'm completely submitted to the will of the Father. And so his timing is the thing that's most important. And so this really, really got me because I am big on timing. I'm always looking at time. I'm talking about quarters and all the things. If you know me, I'm a planner. Like, that's just how I roll. That's how he wired me, hardwired me. And so it's like I can say, like, as an entrepreneur, I've done the things. I've been doing the things, and the things are not happening, Lord. What is going on? Like, I'm staying up late, I'm getting up early, I'm checking all the boxes, I'm meeting the people, I'm helping other people do all of the things and make all of the money. What's up? And so the Lord kind of got me in, like, timing, seed time, harvest. Yes, you're doing all the things and you can be at the mark, but now it's just you have to wait and make sure your heart is right, because if not, your heart will get sick, right? Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Your heart will get sick. But if I give it to you too soon, it's not my will. And it'll mess up the plan if I give you what you're looking for too soon. And so this is the scripture I was reading when he like knocked me upside my head with this years ago. And so I love when he says my time, because in this passage, the time that he's talking about is Kairos time. And so Kairos time is opportunity. And so when you talk about opportunity, it means this is the best time to do something in the moment when the circumstances, it's like when the stars align is how I would say it. Okay. So when the stars align, when this opportunity is meeting itself, yes, this is Kairos time. This is an opportunity. So this is what Jesus is referring to in the time. Okay. And so I love that. Last thing I wanted to say is the world can't hate you, but it hates me because I testify of it and its works are evil. And so I love that even in this part, the brothers agreed with him because the common opinions of their day about good and evil were almost synonymous. Like everybody knew what good was, everybody knew what evil was. But even with the opinions of their day of good and evil, the world couldn't hate them, not the Jews. So he boldly confronted the sins of the Jews in his age, and because he boldly confronted the sins, he was the target of a lot of hate. Because what do we do now? Everybody's tiptoeing around, and we're letting everybody just say and do any old thing. There is no standard, because why? Which system are we showing that we love? And the thing about it is, there's just a standard. When you go to church, remember you used to have to dress up to go to church. I love that, you don't always have to dress up, but even still, like, you should dress nicely. You should, try. You should have some sort of effort, like, and there's not those things in place anymore. So with him saying these things, he's like, the world can hate you. The world cannot hate you, because basically there's no danger in the world hating you. Your actions are one with the world. You live like the world, so they can't hate you when you do the things that they do already. And that is where I draw the parallel of being like the only child and looking for that community, or the only whoever. So first only different. If you're first only different, what do? We look for community. I've been the quirkiest kid my whole life. And so you look for community, and it's so easy when you don't look like other people, they'll turn you away. You don't look like us. No, you don't fit in here. And so where do you go? You go where people will open their arms to you. And I say this about my rainbow friends too. Families are like, oh no, you live a life I don't approve of. You can't be here. I'm disowning you. That's your family. Why would you disown them? So what are they supposed to do? They go where they have a sense of community. All right, I'm off of my horse. Let me wrap this up for y'all. Uh, we're gonna do verse 10. After his brothers had gone up to the festival, then he also went up, not openly but secretly. The Jews were looking for him at the festival, saying, "Where is he?" And there was a lot of murmuring about him among the crowds. Some were saying, "He is a good man," and others were saying, "No, on the contrary, he's deceiving the people." And so, still, nobody was talking publicly about him for the fear of the Jews. And when the festival was already half over, Jesus went up into the temple and began to teach. Then the Jews were amazed and said, "How is this man so learned since he hasn't been trained?" Jesus answered them, "My teaching isn't mine, but it's from the one who sent me. If anyone wants to do his will, he will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I am speaking on my own. The one who speaks on his own seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him. Didn't Moses give you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law? Why are you trying to kill me? You have a demon, the crowd responded. Who is trying to kill you? I performed one work and you all were amazed, Jesus answered. This is why Moses has given you circumcision. Not that it comes from Moses, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so the law of Moses won't be broken, are you angry at me because I made a man entirely well on the Sabbath? Stop judging according to outward appearances, rather judge according to righteous judgment. All right, let's stop there, because child, I'm not gonna make it through the rest of this. I'm not gonna make it through the rest of this. But I love that he did end up going. All the men had to go to the festivals anyway, but he went in secret. And so it's almost as if he were traveling alone. He wasn't traveling openly like they would do back in the day, caravan style, all the camels and all the people, they were rolling deep back in the day. And so he wasn't doing that. It was quite the contrary. But you know, his brothers were instigating for him to do it publicly, and he chose to go secretly. And so the secret part was not like an act of deception, but it was an act of wisdom, because he was looking to avoid unwelcome publicity at this time. And we already know that he knew his enemies were watching them, and they were going to arrest him and kill him when they seen him. And so he wanted to make sure that the timing was right for, he knew it was going to happen, but it just couldn't happen beforehand. And so all we've heard these first 7 chapters is, it's not yet my hour. And so he's still letting us know it's not yet my hour, because the time is not right for him. um, I do want to call out that the people were complimenting him. There was as much complaining as there were people complimenting him. And so I think that that's always good to call out too, because they complained because they wanted Jesus to fulfill their wishes. Like they considered him a genie. So go ahead and fulfill my wishes now, fulfill my desires now when I want them done. And we all know that that's not how God works. But I thought it was really a cool call out, because um, how many of us feel that way now? Like, you know, you're looking for God to do the thing, and you get mad when he doesn't do the thing. Like, I'm mad at God. I'm not serving him no more. I don't want to do this no more because he didn't do what I wanted him to do. And it's like, you know, that's not how this works, right? That's like my kids doing the same thing to me, and they do. Because they're kids, they don't know any better. But they'll tell me in a minute, I'm not parenting right. Because why would you do this? Why would you make me wash the dishes and I was trying to go out with my friends? That's not right. You ruined my life. Like that is their mindset. And I'm just like, you had to do the dishes before you asked me because you go somewhere, right? Like, why didn't you just do what you were supposed to do beforehand? I'm so confused how it got here to me ruining your life. I'm not ruining your life, but there's a standard. Like a rule for us is we need to leave with the house clean. I hope that's the, I mean, maybe it's not the everyday rule for other people, but it's too many of us, okay? It's 500 of us in this house. It's 11 of us in this house. I don't want to come home to a dirty house ever. No, thank you. And so before we leave, I try to make sure the important places are clean. Clean up as you go, but the bathroom should be clean, the kitchen should be clean, you know, the main stay places should be clean. So like the living room, the dining room, all that stuff should be clean. So that way, even if we stay out later, you can just come home and go to bed. Only person needs to stay up is the person that needs to unload the dishwasher so we can keep the party going. Like, no. It's a system. I love a good system. It just makes life a whole lot easier for me. And so they don't be feeling that. But how many of us feel like that with God? Like, you know, he doesn't fulfill our wishes, or he's asking us to do something that we don't want to do. I get that all the time. I'll be like, I mean, do you gotta wake me up at 3, 4, 5 in the morning to talk? I mean, it be to correct me anyway. You can't correct me when I'm just up in the morning. I be quiet. I be sleeping anyway. I gotta get up and lose some sleep for this. Yes, apparently I do. Apparently I do. You know, and so it's like we always want the things our way, and God is like, no, that's not how this works. So I thought it was refreshing to see that, even, you know, as we get into the New Testament, we're breaking those systems out. Well, at least God is. So I always want to talk about that, but then we see like the people are, they either think God is good, like Jesus is good, or a deceiver. And it's like all murmuring, like nobody is speaking openly of him, which I thought was funny too, because religious leaders didn't want people to talk about Jesus at all, but he was still the topic of conversation quite often. And so if you were like just a regular everyday person, you would be fearful of the penalty of talking about Jesus. And so that's why it's all this murmuring, and you just hear it like, you know, as a passerby, because they didn't want, you know, the religious leaders to get them. Um, yeah. So I thought that that was funny, because even the people that disapproved of him, like they were like, he ain't all that great. They still knew to like keep it under a hush tone. Um, but look at Jesus. Jesus is popping out. He said, "Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna go to the synagogue." and we're going to talk. And I love that he went right into the temple and taught. And so, even though he avoided this grand entrance of the festival, he came in his father's timing and he taught boldly. He never shrank back when he was proclaiming God's truth. And I so love that and respect that. And so, I thought it was also funny that they're like, how is he so well learned? And he's never studied. And it's like, actually, there's a teaching, and I'm so sorry. I can't think of it right now. My brain is braining. But Jewish boys have to prepare for bar mitzvah, and they have to do the teaching. And so they go and pretty much get grilled before they can do the bar mitzvah. And that is the last time that we see Jesus. He was away in the synagogue doing that teaching. Um, the last time we see him when his parents lost him and they made it home and they were like, "Where's Jesus?" That's what he was doing. And so he has been taught. He actually checked the boxes. He did the things. That's one thing about Jesus. He was going to come here and follow all the earthly rules and do the things. Okay. And so then we pick up and see him again in the New Testament, right? And so they just don't know these things, but he's already done this. Okay. Um, so that's why he's well studied. He actually did study. Um, but the thing is, he hadn't been like a disciple under a prominent rabbi. That's what they're trying to call out. So he didn't follow like the normal protocol when it came to being an educator or a teacher to be considered a rabbi. But he did follow all of the Jewish protocols. So he learned the scriptures, right? And they're like, how does he know this? And he says, this doctrine isn't mine. It's the one who sent me. And so I love that because Jesus is a carpenter. He doesn't have a seminary degree. And so I always laugh when people say, you got to have a seminary degree to be ordained. No, God qualifies the called. He doesn't call the qualified. Okay. Everything that I was supposed to do, I was doing before I had a certification or paperwork credentials for it. I promise. Um, Not because I wanted to do the things either. It was like he's like, you're gonna do this thing, okay? And so I love that even he calls it out like the doctrine isn't mine, but it's the one who sent me, because he's this eloquent and gifted teacher, but they can't say this is Bishop such and such a spiritual son. That's what they were looking to do. And don't you do that now? Well, who sent you? Who are you under? Um, I don't just let anybody speak in my church, and you shouldn't. But you should also look at the qualifications for who you're asking to speak, because did God tell you they should be speaking, or are you just looking to get some cheeks in the seats? And so that's the one of the what do you call it, prerequisites to getting somebody or allowing somebody to use your pulpit, which is really God's. I'm just saying. I'm just asking. I don't know nothing. I don't want to speak there either. I promise. So I'm just asking. Um. So yeah, I think that was really really good because the spiritual principle behind the doctrine isn't mine, the teachings aren't mine, but his who sent me is letting you know, like, if anyone does his will, then he'll know these teachings. And so it's not always about just having spiritual understanding. A lot of us understand and still don't do. And so having the spiritual understanding is not just about learning your protocols, your policies and procedures, or learning the text, right? They knew the Torah backwards and forwards, but they still weren't living it. And so uh, the the spiritual principle is depending on obedience to this truth. Like, we all know that this is the truth. We all know that the truth is thou shalt not kill. Some people still be killing though. We all know the truth is thou shalt not, commit adultery. Some people still be committing adultery though, right? Like, it's like, these are the things, this is the truth, but you're not making it a point to live out the truth. And so that's why Jesus is calling them to the carpet and calling their bluff. Like, you know this. You know the Torah, you know the scriptures backwards and forwards at this point. Like, we have the Torah, we got the Chronicles, we got First, Second Kings. Like, we got all of these extra books now, and you know them. We're reading them, we're studying them all the time, and you're still doing what we do now. Go to church, we cry at the altar, we're gonna run around, we're gonna sing some songs, we're gonna holler, we're gonna raise our hand, and then we're gonna go into the parking lot, we're gonna cuss people out, and we're gonna get back to our regularly scheduled program before we even leave the church house all the way. That's pretty much what he's calling out. And so I do want to stop us there because I just thought that that was uh, I won't say I thought it was crazy, but Jesus is calling out that no, none of us is keeping the law here. Moses gave you the law, but you're not keeping it. And this is why you want to kill me. I'm the one that's keeping the law. Y'all not keeping the law. You want to kill me? I don't have a demon. So the people thought he had a demon because he healed a man on the Sabbath, and I thought that that was really really great too. We're gonna park here after that, because a midwife is delivering a baby on a Sunday. Is why she can go into labor. Nobody knows how long labor takes. Labor takes as long as it takes, and nobody says God is a bad guy for allowing her to go into labor on a Sunday. I mean, I'm sorry, a Sabbath, because technically Sabbath is Saturday. Nobody is, trying to stone the midwife for working because she working. Labor is labor. When you say labor and delivery, it's labor. Like, you are working, and whoever is helping you to deliver this child is working. They don't get in trouble. They don't get in trouble. And so let's just say, what is it? The rule is circumcision. You got to have circumcision 3 days after birth. Okay, so if a man receives a circumcision on the Sabbath, so what does that mean? This is the rule. So you you're making up stuff is really where he's coming from. Like, a man is completely well on the Sabbath, and you are not happy about it, but we can do all of these works on the Sabbath. And so I thought that that was really really good to call out, because who does these things? God ultimately is the one who sets labor in motion. So he understands timing. And if he didn't want that to be followed, he wouldn't allow. Nobody would be having babies on the Sabbath. Nobody would be having babies on the days before the Sabbath that would require a circumcision. But that's not how this is going. So remember, I told you the Jews at this time were making up rules to pad the rules to pad the law. Does that make sense? So they're making up rules to pad the rules to pad the law. So the law is here, but they're making up extra rules to make sure that they have boundaries so that way they don't break them. And so this is where we have been over the last 10, well, especially around COVID. So I'll say for sure the last 5 years. But I've been saying it for the last 10. God is breaking us out of tradition for the sake of tradition, because that's what we do then when we're just doing tradition. We are, okay, this is the law, but we're adding these extra rules outside for tradition's sake, because this is what we've always done. And if this is the way that we've always done it, doesn't mean that it's the way that it needs to be done. Just saying. Okay. And so Jesus is literally coming in and making this true. He's challenging the status quo here. So I hope that this blessed you. We're going to stop there. We'll pick up at verse 25 next week, and we'll wrap up the book of 7. I'm sorry, the chapter 7. But my goodness, I hope this blessed you. It's always good to, just read the word and see what's true. So I'm challenging you. Look at your systems. Look at systems that, are in play. What's happening? Are you operating in world systems? Sometimes you don't even realize it. We've definitely been having those conversations, right? Like, shoot, I didn't know that that was a thing. All right, gotta stop doing that. Dang, I'm sorry about that. Because sometimes you just don't know. And then sometimes it's like just rough to get out of the system because you've been in it for so long. And so, just praying and asking God to help you, you know, untangle that web is sometimes the necessary thing so you can break free. Um, Either way, I'm praying for you. If you need some additional prayer, let me know. I love you. We got Thursday Bible and Balance with Minister Tiffany. We got Bible study with Pastor John on Saturday. I will be on live Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night because we will be going into our first fruit fast for February. So I hope y'all have a great rest of your week. This is how my kids say I need to do the heart. Love you. All right, y'all be blessed. Y'all have a good one. I will see y'all next week. Okay, bye.